Hello, Barkan here. We're continuing to the 30 days of JavaScript with day 7. So day 7 is functions. What is a function? A function is a reusable block of code or programming statement designed to perform a certain task. We will see how we define a function. We use functions to make code cleaner, easier to read, reusable, and easy to test. There are four types of functions in JavaScript: declaration function, expression function, anonymous function, and arrow function. Function declaration: we are declaring a function with the function keyword and the function's name. Function names generally are behaviors instead of names, so verbs instead of names. And this is the parameters. You can take parameters. We will see. This takes no parameters. And inside this curly brackets, we write our code. And we can call this function by writing its name and giving its parameters. So without a parameter, there is a function square declaration. Number is 2. Square is a number multiplied by number, and we are printing the result. And we're calling it without a parameter because value is defined inside. Same here, a similar example here, and another similar example here. Function returning a value. We can use the return keyword and the variable to return a value from a function, and we can use this function. As you can see here, we're printing the value as full name. And here a two numbers example is a similar one. Very similar. You can check them to understand the concept further. Function with a parameter, so we can give a value, a variable, to the function. For example, area of circle, we are giving 10, and it takes 10 and multiplies it with pi and itself, and returns that value as area. Another similar example. You can use multiple parameters. Here we are using 2 parameters. For example, sum 2 numbers, num1, num2, and we're summing and printing the result. Similar example. You can have more parameters, or instead, it's not a good approach to use values multiple than 3. So in those cases, you can prefer to use arrays or objects. You can define objects with fields. I can give objects as parameter instead of giving multiple parameters. And here we're giving array and summing all its values. Numbers is an array and giving numbers to this function. Sometimes we don't know how many arguments the user is going to pass. Therefore, we should know how to write a function which can take unlimited number of arguments. The way we do it has a significant difference between a function declaration, a regular function, and arrow function. Let's check the examples. Giving unlimited number of parameters in a regular function. So a function declaration provides arguments like objects, for example, an array's dot length gives you its length, and functions also have this type of fields, function objects. You can give any amount of parameters with a to a function that takes no parameters, and reach that argument parameters using the arguments field. So inside this field, this function has an variable called argument that you can use even though you don't see it. For example, we're calling it 1, 2, 3, and 4 and printing these values. Another example here, sum all nums 1, 2, 3, 4 is given as parameter and reached as with the arguments variable. It works as an array here, array object. Arrow functions does not have the function scoped argument objects. To implement a function which takes unlimited number of arguments in an array function, we can use a spread operator allowed by any parameter name. Anything we pass as argument in the function can be accessed as array in the arrow function. For example, args, which means it can take multiple values. It's similar to Java. And 1, 2, 3, 4 is given. The arrow function is defined like using the arrow value. So you can store this function, pass this function, and it does not have scoped arguments, as I just said. Instead, we are using triple dot and args as parameter. Another example, anonymous function. Anonymous functions defined a little differently. These functions are defined as objects. For example, constant anonymous fun is equal to function, and defined like this. It's kind of similar. An expression function is an anonymous function, but we return value. To return this value, we should call the variable square and 2 as a parameter, function n, return n multiplied by n, and save it to the constant square. Self-invoking functions. These functions invoke themselves with a default value. For example, square num, function n, and the default value is given 10. It runs with this default value when it's called. Similar here. Its syntax is similar to anonymous functions. Arrow functions. As I just said, they're alternative to write a function. However, function declaration and arrow function have some minor differences. Arrow functions use arrow instead of the keyword function to declare a function. Constant square equal n, arrow, and value. It's a different syntax. I'm sure there are some differences as well, but this is an introduction to JavaScript. We can't know all the quirks of the language by this series. but I can check it, of course, and maybe comment down below so I can learn and friends can learn too. And here, examples of an arrow function. This is the parameter, and this is the function. It's pretty simple. Sorry, these are default parameters. I set default parameters to self-invoking functions, but actually these are not called. They just they just work by themselves. And default parameters are like this. We are defining, and if its value is given, if no value is given, it will work with the default value. For example, the default value is Peter here. If it's not given, it will print the Peter. Another example. Similar examples, I'm passing them. Alright, exercise time. Declare a function full name and print your full name. Declare a function and last name and print that. This is the summing example. These are pretty simple, so I'm not even explaining them. It's pretty obvious. And area of rectangle. Maybe we are multiplying its length and width. And similar example. And you can do these examples too, but they're just algorithmic, not teaching the function usage, so I just passed them. I think I solved this one. Yes. Quadratic equation is calculated as ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Write a function which calculates a value or values of a quadratic equation. Solve the quad equation. And you used unlimited arguments. Arguments length is length. If length is 0, return the root of the quadratic equation is 0. Else, if length is 3, a is the first element, b is the second element, c is the third element, and root is 0, root 2 is 0. We're calculating the discriminant by b squared minus 4ac from the formula, and if discriminant is positive, root will be minus b plus discriminant squared divided by 2a, and the other one is its positive version. Sorry, it's not positive version. It will be a minus b minus square of discriminants divided by 2a. These are mathematical examples. If you don't understand them, don't worry. Just try to understand the syntax. And if discriminant is 0, it will be minus b divided by 2a, blah blah. And else, if it's smaller than 0, there will be real parts and imaginary parts. It's just math. And here, it takes an array of these values and prints them on the console. And we are using the date time as a method. We're getting date, months, and if it's months it's more than 0, we're adding 0 as pre-value before, so it's in a readable form. And I'm passing these values. Examples, you can check them. And and yeah, you can check these values. Thank you for listening and take care.